I know many of you have heard that term that men are from Mars, women are from Venus. And you know what? That's true. That saying that men and women are so different is absolutely true. And so today we're going to look at two people from reality TV and just listen to a kind of conversation that they had about their viewpoint. You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned. Thank you so much for joining my YouTube channel, Ask Lois the Relatable Therapist. My name is Lois Godot, and this channel is all about promoting positive relationships. And I get my inspiration from reality TV, the blogs, podcasts, news reporting, or anything that I think is going to help me help you have a positive relationship. So I thought I would just jump on here. I'm not going to be before you long and just talk about, this podcast that Carlos King did. And he had Eugene and Cecil on there, two of the Married to Medicine husbands. And I just want to talk about a few things. Won't be before you long. But before we get started, let me read my disclaimer. So this video is protected under the Fair Use Act, copyright Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976, and allowances is made for education, research, scholarship, criticism, news, reporting, comment, and teaching. Carlos King, he just did a podcast on them, and I thought it was just so wonderful. And I kind of wanted to break down some of the things that they talked about, because when we talk to women about these things, they see it totally different. About Cecil Whitmore, which is Simone's husband, and Eugene Harris, which is Toya's husband. And so, like I said, and it was all about the men's view. And he was asking them questions. And I keep saying this, and I might be the only one that thinks this, but I think that Carlos, he is just so imaginative. He just comes up with these storylines, and they're just so important and they're just so informative. So he decided to interview both of these men, and they're talking about candid conversations. And what I like about this is like the storylines that were in Married to Medicine. Some of them we didn't see the ending of it. Some of them were just left hanging, wondering, well, what happened. And so Carlos kind of talked to them about that. And I love that they kind of gave more insight and more perspective. And so I just wanted to talk first for a few minutes about Cecil Whitmore. One of the things that happened is him and Simone early on, they were going to get a divorce because he had a friendship with a female named was Tammy. And Simone was just livid. I mean, she was so upset that he spent so much time with this woman and she was going to get a divorce. And all you saw on the show was that she was so upset, and he acted like he didn't know what was going on. And it appeared like, well, Cecil, she doesn't like this woman that you're dealing with. Why do you keep being friends with her? And he was like, on the show, it would be like, well, I don't see anything wrong with it. And so I never could quite understand, first of all, why he couldn't let her go. And second of all, why Simone was so upset, because nothing ever happened. He didn't cheat with her or anything. And I couldn't understand it. Well, Carlos, he sat down and he talked to Cecil about what had happened with this whole relationship. So Cecil said that it was somebody named Tammy, that he had met her when he was working at, I think, Coca-Cola factory. And so they had became good friends, just friends, nothing intimate or anything else, just friends, even to the point that Simone was friends with her. Simone had went on vacation with her. She was friends with Simone's sister, Simone's family. He said everything was great. He said, and the only thing that he could think of is one day Tammy called and she had a flat tire, and she asked him, could he come fix it? And he got up and went and fixed it. Now, he never did say how old Tammy was, because that might have been a factor too, but she was divorced. And so he said he went and he fixed the car, and then he figured out that that's probably why Simone got upset, because when Simone was stuck at the hospital during a snowstorm, he asked her, do you really want me to come and pick you up? And he said Simone alluded to how he went quickly and went and picked Tammy up. And so when I heard that, I said, you know what, I can kind of see what Simone was saying, because with my husband, there was an incident once. I had a leaky faucet or something with my plumbing, or something was going on for 2 months, and I had to put buckets under there and everything. Then a family member called him and asked him to come fix theirs, and he jumped up right away and he went and fixed it. And I was like, now, wait a minute, I asked you to fix mine, and you act like it's okay for me to keep waiting. But when it came to the family member, he jumped up and right away he fixed it. So I kind of got a little jealous, that, hey, seems like you think this person is more important than me. Of course, we talked about it, and of course, that wasn't the issue, but that's how I perceived it as a female. And so I can see how Simone might have thought that, you know what, you jumped up for her and didn't question it. But then when I asked you, you questioned it. And he probably asked a couple of times, like men do you really want me to come? But when the other lady called, I guess he thought it was an emergency. So because that's why she called, and he went. And so Carlos asked him, well, had there been anything inappropriate that happened? And he said, no. He said, and that's why I couldn't understand. He said, Tammy was like family. He said, she was like family. I looked at her like I would look at a family member. And he said, and she was a part of our family. He says, and that's why I couldn't understand what Simone was saying. And he said, the more I didn't understand, the more she was getting upset. And so he said, finally, because they had been married almost 20 years, he said, I'm just going to let it go. It never got resolved. He just decided to let it go. Because you would see on Married to Men, Simone would get so upset and screaming, how, like she always does, just yelling. And, never did figure out, he never did figure out what the issue was, even though he said he never figured it out. And so when Carlos asked him, do you miss do you miss her? And he says, yeah, she was my friend. And I saw the sadness in his eyes. I saw the sadness in his eyes. And he said, she was my friend and I miss my friend. And I thought about it and I said, that situation was never resolved. Simone just got away because I personally think, and this is alleged, I think Simone was jealous of the relationship because knowing men, he probably, if it's a friend, he probably talked about the fun they had, talked about the things they did. And he probably talked about it. And Simone probably got jealous about him having that relationship. Again, he said there was nothing intimate. There was nothing going on. It was just that she was a friend. He said she was a good person. And this is a thing that kind of struck me when he said that because I lost that friendship, he said, we used to go golfing. He says, now my golfing buddies doesn't call me because she goes golfing with them because he introduced Tammy to them and they go golfing. And so it's like, not only did he lose the friendship with her, but he lost it with his golfing buddies. And he missed that too. Of course, he's created some different ones, but he missed that. And so I sat down and I said, this is why I really encourage counseling. And people might think that, oh, Lois, you're always talking about counseling. Well, for one reason is because he didn't even know, and he still doesn't know the real reason why. And he lost. And so for Simone to say, if you don't get rid of her, our marriage is over, it's like something else was going on more than just, I just don't like him hanging with her. He puts her before me. That's what she said in the show. He puts her before him. And he's like, no, he didn't put her before. But that's why counseling would have came into play so we could figure out what the real issue is. What is the real issue that's going on with this relationship? Because obviously he still misses the friendship. It's a friendship that he lost, not just her, but a second loss with his golfing buddy. And Simone seems to be okay with it. And so I was thinking, I remembered when Simone bought that car. When she bought a car and he asked her, she hadn't asked him anything about it because she said, hey, this is my money. I do what I want to do. And sometimes in the watching Married to Medicine, I just get the feeling that she does what she wants to do. And anytime he questions about it, she starts yelling and screaming. That's her defense mechanism. I'm going to stop you from asking me questions because I'm going to start howling and screaming. And nobody wants to hear that. So he just kind of backs down. And so that was interesting to see that whole dynamics because Carlos was saying that, when things happen, it's like they just leave it and they just don't go back to it and try to figure out, well, what really happened. And so that was that situation. And then the next one they were talking about was with Curtis. And everyone knows Curtis when he stepped out on Jackie. Carlos said that if you knew that Curtis was seeing someone, would you had told your wives? And, Eugene said that, of course, he would tell. He would tell, but in a roundabout way. He would tell Toya, he would say, you know what, maybe you should ask Jackie how the relationship is going. So he would tell in a roundabout way. Sometimes when you see things, you may think it's one thing and it may be something else. And he gave an example. He said, I saw somebody that I know that's a lawyer. He was out eating with a blonde woman. He said, now, I didn't just assume that, he's stepping out on his wife. He said it could have been his daughter's friend. He said it could have been a friend of the man's daughter. He said it could have been a business meeting. He said, so he wouldn't run back and say, hey, guess what I saw? Because it could cause more confusion. And another thing that they were talking about is their marriages. They talked about their marriages and how important their marriages was to them. And it reminded me, Union season 10, one of the things she said that really stuck with me. She said that had she been on Married to Medicine, maybe her marriage would have lasted. She sees how they encourage marriages and how they support marriages. And she says on the other show that she came out of, the Atlanta Housewife, she said they don't encourage marriages. And she said had she been on this show, she probably would still be married. And I thought that was a good point to make, because on Married to Medicine, that is all, well, it used to be all the couples on there were married, and we got to see how the marriages interact. And that was one of the things that Eugene and even Cecil talked about, that what they like about the show, it's about marriages and how marriage and how they interact and how they resolve problems and how they're there to support one another. And even Eugene said that when him and Toya was going through a situation, how Cecil and Simone and another couple, they sat down and they talked with them because they really encourage marriages. And then when Quad and Dr. G was having their situation, they tried to encourage her. What can you do to keep the relationship? So this show, Married to Medicine, it seems like it's all about positivity in marriages. And even though sometimes we may look at it and say, oh, I don't know why they're with this person, but they talk about the positivity. They talk about what helps their marriage become strong. And so what can we learn from this? I always like to just put that in there. What can we learn from this? One of the things we can learn from this is when you are having difficulty in your marriage, when you're having difficulty in marriage, you need to go to someone that can help you, because your situation sometimes is outside of yourself. And I'm not talking about just go to anybody, but somebody that supports your marriage. Just like Eugene said, him and Toya, they were having a situation. They went to Cecil and Simone because they said, you know what? They've been through this. They were on the brink of a divorce and they were able to come out of it. And that's one thing that we can learn, is that when you're dealing with a situation, I've said this before, you need to go to people that can help you in that situation, not people that's just assuming and just guessing. And I think I would do this, but people that have really been through a situation. If you're having a situation with your marriage, you don't need to talk to single people. I just wanted to get on. So if you get a chance, go ahead and check out Carlos. He's got the podcast on. I forgot to write down the name, but it's the men of it's Cecil and Eugene, and they're talking about reality TV, and it's just a candid conversation. And it was just so refreshing to hear both of them talk about not only their marriages, but how they view reality TV, and even some of the situations that were never resolved on TV and how their viewpoint from it. So go ahead and check it out and let me know your comments. Let me know if you saw it. What did you think about it? Like I said, I thought it was so refreshing to just hear them and just hear a male's point of view, because men see things totally different than women, totally different. Whereas, and even one point where Eugene was saying how they were calling him sassy and they were calling him Eugina, and how he was saying that he didn't take offense to that because he should be able to say something about what's going on in his house. And then he made a very good point. He says 30 years ago, a little more than 30 years ago, women couldn't say anything. And so now they're trying to put men in that category where they shouldn't say anything. And so I really like that point, because if it's your marriage, if it's your situation, you have a right to speak on it. No one can tell you not to say something just because they don't like what you're saying. They can't tell you not to say it. And I know Dr. Heavenly says a lot of time, it's like, you know what? Men need to speak to men and women need to speak to women. But sometimes you're talking about stuff that directly impacts that man. So if you, like my husband always says, he says, if you come at me like you're a man, I'm going to come back at you being a man. And so I just think that if you're going to talk about something and it deals with someone's family, it involves somebody's family, they have every right to say what they want to say. They have every right to give their opinion about their situation. So go ahead and write down and let me know what you think, and we can get this conversation started. And I would love to know what some of the points were that you thought were important. And here's another video that I did that's really going to help you encourage positive relationships.